On December 26, 1892, neighbors found the entire Kowalski family seated around their Christmas table in Toledo, Ohio. All 7 of them were dead, but their skin was flushed pink, their expressions peaceful, and the Christmas candles were still burning. The coroner's report said they looked healthier in death than most living people he'd examined. What killed them wasn't in the food. It was something they never saw coming, and the answer would reveal a horror that's been repeating itself for over a century. The Kowalski family lived on Cherry Street in Toledo's Polish district, 3 blocks from the Libby glass factory where Jacob Kowalski worked as a furnace operator. In 1892, Toledo was transforming into what people called the Glass City. The railroads brought hundreds of immigrant families every month, all looking for work in the factories that never stopped burning coal. The Kowalskis had arrived from Poland 2 years earlier, and by all accounts, they'd built a good life in America. Jacob kept a diary, written in Polish, that his grandson donated to the Toledo Historical Society in 1954. The entries from December 1892 paint a picture of a family preparing for their 3rd American Christmas. Jacob wrote about saving money for a small Christmas tree, about his wife Anna teaching their children American carols, about how proud he was that they could afford a turkey for Christmas dinner. He worked double shifts the week before Christmas to buy presents for the children. The last entry is dated December 24th. It says, "Tomorrow we feast like Americans. The children have never been so happy. God has blessed us in this new land." The medical examiner's report, filed with the Lucas County Clerk's Office on December 28, 1892, describes what authorities found when they entered the Kowalski home. The family was seated around their dining table, Jacob and Anna at either end. Their 5 children, aged 4 to 14, arranged along the sides. Plates of half-eaten turkey and potatoes sat in front of each person. A plum pudding, untouched, waited in the center of the table. The Christmas tree still stood in the corner, decorated with strings of popcorn and small candles that had burned down to stubs but never started a fire. Here's what made the scene unusual. Nobody had fallen from their chairs. Nobody showed signs of distress. The younger children's hands were still folded in their laps. Anna's hand rested on Jacob's arm, as if she'd been touching him when she died. The medical examiner noted that their skin showed an unusual ruddy complexion, as if they'd just come in from the cold. Their lips were pink. Their faces were relaxed. They looked like they'd simply fallen asleep at the table. The initial assumption was poisoning. Dr. Samuel Morrison, the county medical examiner, performed autopsies on all 7 family members over 2 days. His findings, preserved in the county medical archives, ruled out every common poison of the era. No arsenic in the stomach contents. No strychnine in the tissue samples. No evidence of spoiled food. The turkey had been properly cooked. The vegetables showed no contamination. Dr. Morrison tested everything on the table and found nothing harmful. Dr. Morrison's autopsy reports are detailed to the point of being disturbing. He documented every organ, every tissue sample, every possible sign of disease or poisoning. The 4-year-old, Katarzyna, showed no abnormalities beyond the cause of death. The 14-year-old, Piotr, had lungs that looked completely healthy. Anna's stomach contents indicated she'd eaten a normal Christmas meal. Jacob's heart tissue showed no signs of the stress that typically accompanies a sudden death. In his notes, Dr. Morrison wrote that he'd never encountered bodies in such pristine condition. He even remarked that their blood, when examined under his microscope, had an unusual brightness to it. The toxicology tests took another week. Dr. Morrison sent samples to a laboratory in Cleveland that specialized in poison detection. They tested for everything known to medical science in 1892. Arsenic-based rat poisons were common in immigrant neighborhoods, so that was the first suspect. The tests came back negative. They checked for belladonna, mercury, lead, antimony, and various plant-based toxins, all negative. The Cleveland laboratory sent back a letter stating that if these people had been poisoned, it was by a substance unknown to modern chemistry. What confused investigators most was the timeline. The neighbor's testimony, recorded in the sheriff's report dated December 27, 1892, established that the Kowalskis had been dead for approximately 18 hours before discovery. They'd eaten their Christmas dinner on the evening of December 25th. The family across the street reported seeing candlelight in the Kowalski windows until around 9 that night. By noon on December 26th, when a neighbor came to borrow sugar, she found the front door unlocked and the family dead at the table. The neighbor who discovered them was a Polish woman named Helena Nowak. Her testimony to the sheriff provides chilling details that didn't make it into the official report. She said the house was warm when she entered. Warmer than her own home, despite the furnace having stopped burning hours earlier. She said the Christmas tree candles had melted down to nothing, but were still somehow giving off light, though she admitted this might have been her imagination. She said she knew they were dead the moment she saw them because nobody sleeps that perfectly still. But what bothered her most, what she mentioned 3 times in her testimony, was that they looked happy. She said, "Dead people don't smile, but the Kowalskis were smiling." 18 hours of sitting upright at a dinner table should have resulted in rigor mortis that would have frozen them in awkward positions. But Dr. Morrison's report notes that the bodies showed abnormal flexibility, even after death. He wrote, "The deceased present a most peculiar condition. The usual signs of death are absent. If not for the complete cessation of respiratory and cardiac function, one might assume they were merely sleeping." The case drew attention from beyond Toledo. The Cleveland Medical Journal published Dr. Morrison's findings in February 1893, asking other physicians if they'd encountered similar cases. A doctor from Cincinnati wrote back describing 3 deaths in a German family the previous winter, all found dead in their beds with the same pink complexion. A physician in Detroit mentioned a Polish couple found dead in their apartment in 1891, looking remarkably healthy, despite being deceased for 2 days. But it was a letter from a factory inspector in Pittsburgh that provided the first real clue. He'd investigated multiple deaths in workers' boarding houses during cold months. The victims always showed the same signs: pink skin, peaceful expressions, and no evidence of traditional poisoning. He'd noticed something that others had missed. In every case, the deceased had been found in rooms with coal-burning stoves or furnaces that had been running continuously in poorly ventilated spaces. The factory inspector's name was Wilhelm Brenner, and his letter to Dr. Morrison ran to 6 pages. He'd been investigating worker deaths in Pennsylvania's industrial cities since 1888. He described case after case of families found dead in their homes during winter, all with identical symptoms. What made Brenner suspicious was that these deaths clustered around the poorest neighborhoods, where families crowded into small spaces and ran their furnaces day and night to fight the cold. Brenner had started measuring the air in these rooms and found that it contained high levels of what he called suffocating gas from incomplete coal combustion. He'd even performed experiments, placing animals in sealed boxes with burning coal, and observed the same peaceful death, the same pink coloration of the skin. The factory inspector's letter prompted Dr. Morrison to reinvestigate the Kowalski home. His supplementary report, dated March 3, 1893, reveals what he'd overlooked during the initial investigation. The Kowalskis had installed a new coal furnace just before Christmas. Jacob had written in his diary about how proud he was to afford such modern heating. The furnace had been running continuously on Christmas Day to keep the house warm during the family's celebration. Dr. Morrison examined the furnace and found that the flue pipe, which was supposed to vent smoke outside, had a crack in it. Coal smoke had been leaking into the house all day. This was before most doctors understood carbon monoxide poisoning. Dr. Morrison consulted medical texts from Europe and learned about coal gas deaths. The symptoms matched perfectly. Carbon monoxide binds to blood cells and prevents them from carrying oxygen. Victims lose consciousness gradually, often without realizing anything is wrong. The gas gives their skin a characteristic cherry red color that persists after death, making them look healthier than they did in life. The revelation should have closed the case. Tragic accident, faulty furnace. Family too poor to afford proper installation. But then people started talking about the other deaths Dr. Morrison had glossed over in his supplementary report. He'd found newspaper clippings in the Kowalski home, all dated from November and December 1892. Stories about other families in Toledo's immigrant neighborhoods found dead in their homes with no clear cause. Jacob had been collecting these articles. He'd written notes in the margins, in Polish. When a translator examined them for the police, the notes revealed that Jacob had been worried about something he called the winter sickness. Jacob's notes described a pattern he'd noticed. Families would move into homes near the factories. They'd install coal furnaces to survive the harsh Ohio winters. Within months, someone in the family would die, usually children first, then the adults. The deaths always happened on the coldest nights, when furnaces burned hottest and windows stayed shut against the freeze. Jacob had counted 15 families in the Polish district alone who'd lost members this way since 1890. More disturbing were Jacob's final notes, written in the margins of a newspaper article from mid-December. The article was about a German family found dead on Christmas Eve, 1891, exactly 1 year before the Kowalskis died. Jacob had circled the date and written in Polish, "It comes back each Christmas. It waits for families to gather. It takes them when they're warmest and happiest." The Toledo authorities never publicly acknowledged Jacob's research. Dr. Morrison's final report blamed the deaths on accidental carbon monoxide poisoning and recommended that all immigrant families have their furnaces inspected. The city started a public education campaign about coal furnace safety. Deaths from coal gas dropped significantly in 1893. Case closed. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. The Kowalski house stood empty for 3 months after the deaths. In March 1893, a Hungarian family named the Ferenczis rented it. The landlord had the furnace repaired and certified safe by a city inspector. The Ferenczis moved in on March 15th. By April 2nd, 3 of their 4 children were dead. Same symptoms: pink skin, peaceful expressions, found in their beds on a cold night when the furnace had been running. Dr. Morrison performed the autopsies. His report, which is notably brief compared to his Kowalski investigation, lists the cause of death as coal gas poisoning, accidental. But a note stapled to the back of the file, discovered when the county digitized its records in 2003, tells a different story. The note is in Dr. Morrison's handwriting and dated April 3, 1893. It reads, "Furnace inspected and found functioning properly. No cracks in flue. No source of gas leakage. Children's windows were open. Outside, air temperature 45 degrees. Coal consumption minimal. This cannot be coal gas. Requesting second opinion from State Medical Board." No second opinion was ever filed. The note was the last document Dr. Morrison wrote about any death in that house. 3 weeks later, he resigned from his position as county medical examiner and moved to California. He never practiced medicine again. The house on Cherry Street was torn down in 1894. The city records list the reason as structural instability, but property records show it was one of the newest buildings in the neighborhood, constructed in 1889. The lot remained empty until 1902, when a new building was constructed on the same spot. If you're interested in more hidden chapters of American history like this, consider subscribing. These stories don't make it into textbooks, but they're preserved in medical archives, old newspapers, and forgotten county records, waiting for someone to connect the dots. Fast forward to 1923. The building constructed on the old Kowalski lot in 1902 was now a boarding house for factory workers. On December 25th, a night watchman doing his rounds found 7 residents dead in the common room. They'd been having a Christmas dinner. The Toledo Blade ran a small article on page 6, attributing the deaths to a faulty gas heater. No autopsies were performed. The deaths were ruled accidental. In 1947, the boarding house was converted to apartments. On Christmas Eve, police found a family of 4 dead in their second-floor unit. Carbon monoxide from a space heater, according to the police report. The family had only moved in 3 weeks earlier. 1968. A couple renting the ground-floor apartment died on Christmas night. The fire department's report cited a blocked chimney flue causing carbon monoxide buildup. The couple had hosted a small Christmas party. Their guests had left around 8. The couple was found the next morning, seated at their decorated table, looking peaceful and healthy, according to the officer's report. The building was condemned and demolished in 1972. The lot is now a parking area for a light industrial complex. But city safety records show a pattern that nobody's officially connected. Since 1892, there have been 23 deaths attributed to carbon monoxide poisoning within a 3-block radius of the original Kowalski home. All but 2 occurred between December 20th and December 27th. All victims were found in groups of 3 or more. All showed the characteristic pink skin and peaceful expressions. And in 15 of the 23 cases, investigators noted that the supposed source of carbon monoxide was functioning properly when tested. The most recent death was in December 2019. A family of 3, renting a renovated loft in the industrial building that now occupies part of the old Polish district, was found unresponsive on the morning of December 26th. The news report said carbon monoxide from a faulty furnace. The building's safety inspection records, which are public, show the furnace had been serviced and certified 1 week before the deaths. The carbon monoxide detector in their unit was working. It never went off. Jakob Kowalski's diary, preserved at the Toledo Historical Society, contains one final entry that the family never mentioned when donating it in 1954. It's written on a loose page, tucked between December 24th and the back cover. The ink is different, darker, as if it was written later. It's dated December 25th, 1892, at 11:47 p.m. Jakob wrote it in Polish, and the translation reads, "We are still at the table. Anna cannot move. The children have stopped breathing. I can feel the cold inside my chest. But I am not afraid. There is something in the room with us, something that smells like coal smoke but moves like wind. It has been waiting in this house. It was here before we moved in. It wants us to stay, to keep the table set, to keep the candles burning. It wants company for Christmas." Below that, in handwriting that the Historical Society's analysis confirmed was not Jacob's, someone had written in English, "Next year, same time, more will come. The table is never empty for long." The parking lot on Cherry Street charges $3 an hour. Nobody parks there on Christmas Eve anymore. The property manager couldn't explain why when the city council asked about the lost revenue. He just said that people avoid it, especially in December, especially when it gets cold enough to see your breath, and especially around the hours when families gather for dinner and light their candles and sit down together to celebrate surviving another year.